Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of Just Us with Khutso
and Emily and her crew.
With our show, we discuss everyday topics in a way that we hope unites the world. So, Emily, you've got our crew over there. Yeah?
So I think this is what our show's about is the reality of life. We don't have the team behind us to be able to swoop the imperfections away for a broadcast of our podcast. So here we are all together talking about children and with the children.
Oh, are you done, Emily?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and how appropriate today. I mean, we are totally organic. We had promised we would screen like 2 days ago. That's our usual, streaming time. But as you have it, we're moms, and I'm sure if you're a parent, you can relate. And here you are, it's bedtime over there. The kids are ready for bed, and, and mine, I just dropped them off at school. And yet, this is what we do. And so today we are really going to think about and talk about how best we raise these little people and how we get them ready for the global community that we strongly believe in. Because in part, remember last week we talked about issues of identity, how that, insofar as it's everybody's fundamental need, can also get very stifling. In terms of global cohesion and equity and such. So, Emily, I have the advantage of not having kids climb all over me. Normally they do. So we'll just have to chat, I got my coffee over here, so, whoever is there. Let's see. Where do we begin? We also, in our show, like to talk about things that few people are daring to raise. Yeah, we'd like to talk about elephants in the room. That's what we promised ourselves, because it's irritating that sometimes we just so politically correct that we're afraid to offend anybody, but we're afraid to say the truth also, at least from our perspective. Yeah. So the elephant in the room this week, as far as I'm concerned, and Emily, you want to chime in as well, around the whole issue of identity is just how skin color dictates what you're allowed and not allowed to say. So, for example, as a light-skinned person, right, as a so-called Caucasian person, you're really not allowed to comment much on Black folk issues, are you?
No comment.
Exactly my point. See, and let me assure you, people of the world, being a brown-skinned woman, I don't view things in a way that conforms to if there is such a stereotypical, perspective. I tend to think like myself, and that gets me in trouble because sometimes I do disagree with the way other brown-skinned people feel. And I think it goes to my point again that, skin is just so arbitrary, right? I mean, not skin, race as a concept is just so arbitrary. We can all agree or disagree, but we don't have to agree or disagree simply because we're a certain skin color. I've been called a coconut or whatever, which means, it's just to challenge you. They say, well, you as a brown skin person, you're not allowed to think, to contradict what other brown skin people think. And I think it's unfortunate because I think we're all human and skin color shouldn't dictate how you think, how you feel about things, right? Anyway, so how do we get our kids to not be stuck with some of what we're dealing with? Because clearly being multicultural, so-called multiracial, they don't fit boxes. We ourselves don't belong to any boxes. We don't fit any boxes. And it's ironic. Emily, I'm doing a lot of talking today.
Well,
Let me share a story, and then I'm going to let you share Kira's story. Okay,
yeah.
to demonstrate my point about how important it is to be able to raise our kids to transcend these boxes, because they already do. I'm raising my kids. They're really multicultural and so-called racial. I despise the term racial. um, and they hold a couple of passports, right? So how do you raise them in a society that's racially polarized like South Africa? That's where we are. And they seriously are very polarized. Looks like Sabine has something to say about this. Sabine, what do you want to say? Sabine, what do you think about people with different skin colors? What do you think? Do you think they're interesting? Or do you think there's something weird about different skin colors?
I I have an interesting story about that.
Well, why don't you take it away, and then I'll share my story in a minute. Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Okay, come, sweetie. I want to tell a story about you. Do you remember when we were at the hairdresser?
No.
Yeah, we went to the hairdresser together, and we were getting our hair cut, and we were looking at a magazine.
Yeah.
Yes, we're here.
And so and so and so uh we were sitting at the hairdresser, and you were looking at a magazine, and you saw a baby. Do you remember seeing the baby picture? And you said it looks just like me.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that baby picture was a little baby that had the same skin as Khutso, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it looked just like you, huh? Yeah, that's what Kira's perspective of the world was a baby as a baby, and she saw a baby, and she reminded of her as a baby. So
Oh,
so it was quite touching and cute. I think earlier I talked about how Kira likes to refer to us as humans, as opposed to however else we might identify ourselves. And I think that's where we're headed with this conversation, is around identity
yeah,
and raising our children so that they have a sense of identity in a diverse world, but not in a way that separates them or makes them feel like they have to be separated.
yeah. That is, I love Kira's perspective, because it goes to show that our children are not born, with all these prejudices we carry around skin color. I mean, she clearly saw a baby. It was a brown skinned baby, but she could see herself in the baby.
Right.
She could identify with the baby on the basis of everything, obviously other than skin color, because their skin colors, maybe to her they're even similar. I mean, all of this is a spectrum of melanin, isn't it? So you're a little tan today, and then you're out of the sun, you're a little lighter, and that happens to dark skinned people too. At the end of winter, all dark skinned people, all brown skinned people are a little lighter brown, right? It's just a human thing. It's like, how do you preserve that in our children, where they truly are past exactly what we think we're fighting for, where we can build society that are not predicated on skin color. How do you preserve that in a child, so that they grow up really feeling like seeing what we see, seeing humans, and really not skin color? Because let me tell you, from my perspective, or from my experience, I got a couple of stories to share. Obviously, if you know anything about South Africa, it's one of the most racially polarized places in the world, truly. And are you okay, Emily?
I'm just putting my child to bed.
Okay. All right. So,
Multitasking at
I had lived abroad forever, and then when I moved to South Africa, the minute I got off the airplane, I was carrying this tiny little baby. My 10-year-old at the time was really like one. He's very light skinned, because I'm brown skinned. His dad is Caucasian, and so he's smack in the middle in terms of skin color, right? But in South Africa, race is such a big deal. It's like you have people classify you into one category or another before they'll even speak to you, because then they choose a language they address you with, right? For better or worse. I'm just saying. I'm gonna try and not criticize, right? But it's such a strong filter, this race thing. I get off the airplane, folks wouldn't believe my child is mine. I had to, of course, I had passports and everything, but I remember for the very first time, I just, it had never occurred to me that anyone could question that my child was mine. Because wherever, I'd most recently been living in Colorado, and everybody there had said, "Oh, your child looks just like you, looks like your dad, his dad, whatever. Your child's your child." But you get here and everybody's like, "No, he can't be yours." No one's looking at features, even just the skin color alone. We'd be followed around in grocery stores. I mean, it's just, yeah. Anyway, and then, a follow-up story are, I got twins that go to an international school in South Africa. It's like they live in two different worlds. At school, there is this global community, people from all over the world, and multicultural people, right? But then at home, we live in South Africa, right? Where children, when they play, race is it features. So children around here believe you ought to look like your parents, starting with your skin color. So here's our little daughter. She's 6, Nelly. She came to me one day. She's like, "Mama, how come I don't look like you?" I said, "Honey, what do you mean?" She said, "But your skin looks different than mine." So I said, that's because I'm brown skin, your dad is light skin. When you mix the two colors, you come out right in the middle. Just as you mix red and green, it'll give you purple, whatever it is. She's like, "Oh." And then I said, "Yeah, just like your one friend at the international school, several friends. Yeah, they also have a dark skinned mom and a dark skinned dad or whatever. That's the skin color they get." She got it. By contrast, my 10-year-old goes to a public school here. The notion that you can have parents of different skin colors is just non-existent. So for the longest time, I mean, now after 7, 8 years, everybody's gotten used to it. But for the longest time, my child had to account for, why he doesn't look like his mom. Essentially, because even people that look like him have parents that are already, a certain, so-called mixed kids have mixed parents, but he's a first generation so-called mixed kid, right? So that was pretty hard for him. Anyway, I think I'm moaning. I don't like to keep things heavy.
I think
go with this, Emily.
I think you're doing a fantastic job, Khutso. Trying to have a serious conversation at this circus that is happening. I'm in serious circus.
Oh my, I see Sabine's locks are all over the screen.
I think that I just want to highlight that this is truly a COVID life of mine, and I know many others. This is the pure epitome of my meetings on a daily basis, where you're trying to have a very serious work conversation, and then you have all these interruptions, and I think that I don't know. That's what hopefully part of this illustrates just the happiness that children have and their desire to just be and exist and enjoy life for what it's about, and not get bogged down in trying to discriminate against each other so that we can enjoy the essence of life.
Yeah.
This is probably also an illustration of children that need to go to bed.
Way past somebody's bedtime, let me tell you.
No, stop, children. Okay.
Oh dear. Okay.
So maybe I want to finish with one thing. speaking of children and unifying and identity, and we talked about this earlier, Khutso, in an earlier conversation, which tend to go a lot smoother than our actual live podcast.
I know. We should just record our own lives and our conversations on the phone when we don't even have our noses powdered up, right?
Yeah, I think. But what I wanted to mention was the story that I was telling you about how when I was. I'm just gonna move. Just to finish this off, and it's gonna get dark for a minute, and my children will follow me, but the noise may tone down. So I just wanted to finish with the story of traveling around the world with my baby in particular, but also both children, and I found the most unifying thing that I had ever experienced was becoming a mother.
Yeah.
And when I traveled as a mother, all of a sudden, all of those discriminations or those identities that are placed upon us based on skin color or based on culture totally disappeared. Because if you show up with a baby in your hands and there's another mother or another father, they all can relate to you because we all go through the same thing. We all have these moments, like right now, where our children are not necessarily being children. And we can all relate to that. And if you're sitting on an airplane for 14 hours with a baby, the amount of empathy that you get and the amount of support is just unbelievable. It would just really touched me. And it really showed how it's really silly how outside of those moments, we tend to just create division. And so I think that's what we're trying to, as far as children, and it's taken off a little bit, taking us off a slightly different route from a children and their identity and raising a global citizen in a way that gives them the opportunity to appreciate and embrace diversity, but also to feel at home wherever they are, and having multicultural children from two different nationalities, allowing them to embrace both those nationalities and not have to choose.
And the world, right? Not just
to expose them to the world is something that, at a very young age, they've been able to do. Maybe others don't have that opportunity, but we can take that mindset and still apply it. And so in this conversation of children, I think it is quite appropriate that we have children in the background.
I think we've said that only 7 times.
So I know, quite distracting. But again, it's our reality. And I think.
And you know what? I did want to jump in with what you shared around how unifying motherhood is, because I had the exact same experience. I remember, earlier on when my little guy, my 10-year-old, was a baby, I had a really difficult, let's just say it wasn't voluntary entirely that I came back to Africa. I was under duress at the time, and I was very stressed about life. And, here I am in this place and everybody's like, anyway. And I remember walking down the streets of Pretoria alone, walking to work after I got a job. And I stumbled every day. I would see this blind woman with her husband and her kid looked like was exactly my son's age. He was like a toddler. And they would sit there as a family and sing. And I would just cry, not because of, feeling the hardships for her. Of course, that was touching that she doesn't have a home. She and her kids don't have a home. But how much I felt like her life was similar to mine, because her priority was to provide for this child of hers. And she was going to do whatever it took, begging in the streets, sing to total strangers so she could raise some money. And she's blind. She and her husband were blind. But the little guy could see, though. He looked like he was sighted. And man, every time they would sit there, right? Right on the cusp of my campus where I used to work. And it would make me cry every time, because just she made me realize just how universal motherhood is. That I think that's why we like, even when you see it in animals, you see a lion and its cub, we all go, oh, you see a monkey and its baby, we all, oh, because that's what being, that's what being human or being animal is, without prejudice. And that's the world I'd like to raise my children to create. And that's the life I want them to have in this lifetime, where they can really just be comfortable anywhere and everywhere, and really appreciate the differences that exist in life, and understand that home is not this little piece of land where mommy was born or where daddy was born, but the globe is the world. Now imagine if we raise even children that don't have the resources that ours have. I mean, there are plenty of kids that don't go to international schools. Of course, the vast majority of kids in the world don't. But if we were able to raise all kids with a new paradigm, which totally killed race, skin color is just like Kira does, brown is brown, purple is purple, green is green, but that's the extent of it. Mama's friend Khutso has brown skin and brown braids or whatever it is. And my kids think, oh, and Emily is that peach lady. They call Caucasians peach because color wise it looks like peach to them, right? It's that Caucasian lady, and that's just it. That's just it. So if we raise our kids without the framework of race, and if we raise them to not be afraid to be different, to actually celebrate being different, I think we stand a chance of really having a good global community. I think that's what we're all trying to build towards. It's just that right now we happen to walk into paradigms that already exist. And if we don't transcend those paradigms, we're never going to reach the global equity harmony that we think we want, I think. What do you think? That was a whole lot of rambling.
I think that if we could one thing that's nice about international schools is it's an international curriculum. You're bringing in the global perspective into the curriculum, and there's no reason, even if it's not an international school, not to integrate a curriculum today across the globe, regardless of the country, that has an international context. I mean, we're looking at a world now that, as far as business goes, is completely global. As far as living, we're transgressing boundaries as far as where we live and who lives where, outside of course the COVID experience. But it's just a global society today, so we might as well bring that into the perspective of their education as well. So I think with that, I might need to put my children to bed, given in this multi-time zone conversation, it is getting late. And and I think next week, who knows what could happen.
Well, and next week we're hoping to talk about, we're going to keep, henceforth, we're going light, right? The last couple of weeks we've been quite serious. We really want to get to a point where we keep it light. So next week we're just going to talk about hair, right? Sabine, do you want to join us to talk about hair next week?
She wants to tell you something.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Nothing? Oh, okay. I think she chickened out. All right. Well, next week maybe she'll be brave enough, or maybe the children will be asleep.
Well, you know what? It is what it is. That we said we were going to keep it authentic and real. This is what it is. So, okay. So next week, hair, do tune in. And we hope to be a lot. Yeah, it'll be fun and light. Right?
Trust us, we can make hair interesting.
Yes, we all have hair. Right?
We can make it controversial.
We're not going to talk about the politics of hair, in case you're thinking. We're not going to racialize hair. We're just going to talk about hair. How you can, make your pom-poms, get extensions, cut it off, whatever.
Brush that hair.
Yeah, curl it, straighten it, cut it.
Okay, well, thanks everybody.
Right. Thanks everybody, and please, if you're watching, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button at the bottom. So that's it. Well, thanks everybody. Good night, Sabine. Goodbye, Kira. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.